My name is Jesse Bassett. I'm a senior now. I was here my freshman year, 2007. Started out as a math major. Now I'm computer science. I should be graduating in May. The PLC, to me, was a great transition from the organization of high school to what WPI offers. You get all the structure that high school gave you, a regular schedule every day, same professors teaching you, lots of one-on-one activity, but it also gets you introduced to how projects work at WPI. Project-based learning is one of the keystones of what WPI is all about, and the PLC gives you a nice introduction to that. Just having a dedicated space, it made it a lot easier to have some place to go to work. A lot of the projects were very interesting, and it was very nice to get sort of a foothold in WPI without suffering such a jarring shock from what I was used to. A lot of it was a nice transition phase. Unfortunately, I managed to get 5s on my AP exams and had to retake Calc 1 and 2 while I was here. That was a bit disappointing. But that's really my only regret.
It was good for me that you got 5s, because then you could help me.
I was able to help out a lot of people. Seeing the same people every day for an entire semester really builds some really strong friendships. I still speak with everybody who's in my PLC class. It's a tighter group of friends than even the people that I lived with freshman year in the dorms here. I helped a lot of people get through beginning calculus and physics, and a lot of people helped me get through the beginning English and history classes that the PLC requires you to take. It's a very good community of support that the PLC supports. Working in groups is one of the toughest things that, or one of the most important things to learn during your college time. And the PLC really bolsters that. You're constantly, I can't think of any, there were only a couple assignments that you had to do on your own. Everything else was a team-based project, 3 or 4 people. And it really prepared me for everything that I faced later in college. And when I did my first internship last year, my employers were incredibly impressed with the abilities that I had in group work, which is something that I owe directly to the PLC. I'm not sure I would be able to work as such a functioning team member without the experience that I got here. It's working in a team is an undervalued and undertaught skill at a lot of places, but it's really enforced here. For regular classes here, there's not so much now. The rest of WPI is kind of caught up to me, as it were, in being able to work in a group, but especially in freshman, sophomore year, and even into your IQP, your first major project here at WPI. The experience that you get in the PLC will set you leaps and bounds ahead of your peers. Being able to work as a team member or even as a team leader is something that I'm not sure that I can adequately express how valuable that experience is. Being able to step up to your teammates and say, okay, I've done this part, we should really subdivide it here. Being able to effectively manage your time and effectively manage your work is part of an essential skill set that I don't think I would have if it weren't for the PLC. It definitely helps to lower some of the barriers that ordinarily come from the really large classes that happen everywhere during your freshman year. The introductory physics classes, they're usually 150, 160 people. You sit in a large auditorium, you listen to the professor talk. Occasionally, if he cracks a joke, you can laugh. But otherwise, you just take notes and you show up every day. In the PLC, you meet the professor. I still can see Professor Kyle and I can still joke with him to this day, 3 years later. Professor Heinreicher still knows my face. He taught math he taught us introductory calculus. He still knows who I am. I can still laugh and joke up with him. It's the bonds that you create with professors are just unparalleled, because they're there with you every day. They're there to help you personally. You asking questions is not asking questions is expected of you. If you don't ask questions, then something's wrong. You're required to build a close relationship with your professors, otherwise you just won't survive. Having access to the PLC is a great boon. There are whiteboards everywhere. I would come down here at 2 in the morning when I had something on my mind, and I would write it out all over the walls, all over the whiteboards. There's desks. It's a nice, quiet space. It's quieter than the library. You can do more in the library. It's a much more open space. Having a dedicated place to think and to work on assignments is such an amazing thing to have. You can get so much more done, and having 24/7 access to this room is I can't find the words. It was just fantastic.
Very nice.
That, and also off the record, my friends and I would come down here because there were all these great tables. We'd come down here every Saturday and play D&D for hours because no one would be here.
Yeah. So I would, so you got about 20 minutes or so?
Yeah.
All right. Just let me know if you need to leave.
My phone will go
There's
off.
just like 4 more questions. So, think of some of your favorite projects that you worked on, or some examples of some of the.
It's been a while. One of the favorite projects that I had was for physics, and we were told to given a theoretical water tank, to design an experiment that, using only a stopwatch and a ruler, to find the volume of water contained in the cylinder. So we weren't allowed to capture the water or to measure the inside of the tank. So we had a week and a half to do that, and in that week and a half we built 3 or 4 test models, came up with 7 or 8 scenarios, tested 3 or 4 hypotheses, and nothing appeared to be working. So we went to our professor, and we asked for his help, and he stayed with us after class one day for 2 or 3 hours. We got the dedicated PLC TA. They stayed with us and tried to help us, and in the end, none of us could figure it out, but we spent a week and a half trying to solve a problem, and we ended up writing up a very detailed report on every method we tried, why it didn't work, ways to get around it, what we were missing due to our limited tool set. Had we a bucket, we could have figured it out. Had we a number of things, we could have figured it out, and we gave all of the data that we were able to figure out using only just a ruler, a hole in the tank, and a stopwatch. It was an amazing project, and one that's really set the standard for me here for the rest of my days. The workload in the PLC is intense. When I was here, I would spend the majority of my time in this room working on assignments and projects. But with a dedicated space, it goes so much easier, or it goes so much faster, and it's so much easier to do because you have one space where you can keep all your work, you can have a consistent train of thought in the same environment, and you can get a lot of stuff done. There's a lot of stuff to do in the PLC. You have a lot more class. It was really, since I've done it, it was the equivalent of taking it was the equivalent of taking an overloaded semester, so taking 4 classes in a term. is the workload that I was subject to. But in C&D term, when I got into the regular classes, I went from having class all day to class 3 hours a day. And my workload went from 15, 20 hours of work per class to 10 hours of work per class, 5 to 10 hours of work per class. And I was so over-prepared for it. C&D term, most of my sophomore year as well, I breezed through the classes because the PLC was so much more of a challenge. It got me through a lot of the early classes here at WPI. It wasn't until I started hitting the upper level theoretical stuff that the workload began to compare and I began to have as much fun. I really liked having access to the professors. It's not like a normal class where you see them and then if you have any questions you can bring it up at their office hours or maybe send them an email. They're there every day. So you can go up to them and, you know, when they walk in the morning go, "Hey professor, I had this question about something something," or "Hey professor, I didn't understand this part of the homework. Could you help me out with it?" And they'll be willing to do that. It's an unparalleled opportunity. There's no other class at WPI that you'll be able to have access to professors at that level. Otherwise, you're going to have to go up to class or go up after class and ask them a question with 20 other kids. You'll get 15 seconds of their time. And this, you have hours of time that they'll dedicate to you. It's questions will be answered that you didn't even know you had. All the other students, they all have questions, but they all have the same questions you do. It's fantastic. The out-of-class learning experiences is just so formative and so unbelievably easy to have and easy to do. It's great. I would recommend the PLC to any student who's looking for a nice transition from a heavily structured high school life into the more free-form college life. I came from a high school where my classes were mostly, they were all picked out for me. I had semester-long classes, but I was used to working all day, and I wasn't used to the free-form nature that college is. And for anybody who's looking for looking to make the transition a little easier, I would highly recommend the PLC for that. Without it, I know the school's been phasing out programs like the PLC for more of the big freshman seminars like Feed the World and Power the World, which are great programs, but it really it's going in the wrong direction in my opinion. Some students don't, or a lot of students aren't comfortable with having the huge class sizes, and having a smaller, more tight-knit community to work through, or to work with, makes the experience just so much greater, and I think WPI is really missing that without the PLC.